Y'all, I got a question for you. Who are you uninterrupted, right? And so if you watch Lovecraft Country like I do, I actually need to catch up on Sundays or Sundays episode of the last one, but I think it was episode 4 or 5 when the two ladies, and I'm horrible with names, were talking. And she asked her the question, like, who are you uninterrupted? And I was like, ooh, that's like spicy, right? And it had me thinking for almost two weeks, and my son is going crazy, so I'll probably keep this short. But for since I saw it, like going on like what 2 weeks now, and it is like I've been thinking about it like crazy, and I've been having a lot of conversations with others about like who are you uninterrupted, and if like nothing ever got in the way of what you ultimately want to be, who would you be? Like, what does that actually look like? What does that mean to you? Even this year, right? Literally, all of us have been interrupted by this year. And if that didn't happen, who would you be? What would you be doing? If the things didn't get in the way of your life and your career or your business, if certain people didn't interrupt you and kind of derail you off your tracks, who would you be? What would you be doing? It's such a big, powerful question. And then it really just gives you more questions, right? Like I posted, I think a few days ago, it was just like, once I started trying to answer that question, there were all these other questions. And so the first question is like, who are you uninterrupted? And then I think the next question you want to ask yourself is, what is actually interrupting you? So who would you be at the fullest extent of who you are, the fullest extent, right? Being the best steward of the gifts that you have been given. Who would you be? What would that look like? And then like knowing that there have been things or people along the way that have interrupted you, gotten in the way, broken a chain, broken a pattern, right? Broken a process, broken your path. What are those things? What have they been? Because for a lot of us, it's been more than one thing, because life is a journey, right? And life will punch you in the gut more times than you can ever begin to admit or count. And then, so what are those things? Who are those things? And now that you've done an assessment of what is interrupting you or who is interrupting you, what are you going to do about it? Right? Because it's one thing to do the assessment and realize, okay, these are the ways that I have been interrupted. This is who I would be if none of these things ever got in the way. And now that I know that these things are here or have happened, what am I going to do so that they no longer continue to interrupt me, right? It's some really, really deep work that I think a lot of us are afraid to answer that question. I also don't think it's a question or those questions can be answered overnight. That's really some kind of deep reflection. And I think that's a lot of part of like hard work, right? Reflection, inner work requires us to look at the ugly parts of ourselves and the ugly parts of our lives and the ugly parts of our paths and saying, I want to do something about it. And I also want to be able to address it and be very honest with myself about what that means for me. And so sometimes it's easy to just keep those things swept under the rug and not say, like, you know what, something has interrupted me. And I have let that get in the way. I maybe have taking it and wearing it as a badge of honor so that I can continue to keep telling this story. So I have a justification of why I won't push past that. Some of that, right, when you answer that question about, who would I be uninterrupted, and then getting to the point of what is interrupting me, is that even a thing that you're going to be able to solve yourself? That's probably going to require therapy for some of us, or a lot of us, right? And then admitting to the fact that is also a path that you need to take. And I think now with everything kind of being virtual, there's all these virtual therapy platforms that make it, I guess, a little bit easier, I guess, for lack of better words. And so, anyways, I wanted to share that with y'all. Me and my husband and my kids have been on a bit of a road trip for a safe and social distance road trip, by the way. And so we're getting ready to pack up and head back home. But I just wanted to ask that question because I had a conversation with my cousin, and we're hosting a Thursday show on Facebook called like Unleashing Your Boldness. And so we talked about that last week. And it was so funny because everyone in the comments was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how to answer that question right now. And I was like, yeah, it's taken me like a week. Alan said, my own mind and thoughts are my biggest hurdle. Mine too, right? It's the longest conversation that we have is a conversation that we have with ourselves since the time that we can comprehend what those thoughts mean and kind of put them into something. And it's who we talk to the most every single day is ourselves. And so reframing thoughts is not an easy process, right? Imposter syndrome and letting those thoughts stop you. Upper limiting is also something that is the conversation and the story that we keep telling ourselves. I can't remember the name of the book that I was reading, but they were just talking about how the negative thoughts that we have that are debilitating to us always go back to our childhood. And I'm trying not to sound like all Oprah Super Soul Sunday-ish, but you a lot of times we can, right? It's just like, you know, I remember for the longest, it's just like telling myself, like, I'm enough. Like the things that I've done are enough, right? And not feeling like you have to constantly wear the Superwoman, Superman, you know, super whatever, a cape on all the time, and being able to take it off and breathe and slow down and gather yourself and give yourself grace of that you are still moving in the right direction, and there's ebb and flows with all of that. And that is the story that I kept kind of going on. And then I can having some deep conversations around that. I was like, that went back to, you know, my mom, right? And things that she said to me in middle school, not middle school, like high school and college, and some really hurtful things, but I understood where she was coming from. But I channeled them in a way that ended up making myself work myself into exhaustion, right? And so a lot of that, I think, Alan, and I'm no psychologist, I'm just talking from my personal experience, is, and then reading that book, the Upper Limiting book, is really about kind of going back to that and healing that first, so then we can then start healing the conversations that we're having with ourselves. And it's true, parents' generation was in survival mode. Survival mode puts you in a limited mindset. It does, right? Survival mode does, because you're always in kind of fight or flight, you know, and it doesn't really leave room for dreaming and being innovative and being creative and kind of testing things, because, excuse me, you want to stay in this really safe box all the time. And you are kind of constantly, I don't know about you, Alan, but like in kind of like this fight within yourself about what you want to do and how that matches up to someone else or our parents or what they wanted us to do. And it's hard to go against the grain and go against people that have in a lot of ways sacrificed their life for you and thought what they were doing was right at that time, right? And then you realize what that means for you as you get older and how that stops you, and then the tools in which you need to kind of push past that. And so a lot of motivational stuff for me over the years has kind of helped with that as well, and surrounding myself with really positive people. And I know it's all the cheesy things that people say, but the basic stuff works, right? As far as like the reinforcement in which you need, quickly assessing and removing myself from toxic environments and around toxic people is also something. Like, I will get out of a friendship or a business relationship really quick, fast, in a hurry, and my business partner Sarix always laughs at me about that, but I'm like, I have to protect my energy, right? And I have to protect the energy exchange. And not everybody, even though we want to have these kumbaya moments, not everybody's like, you don't always vibe with everyone on the same level, and that can be fine. You can still love someone from a distance, but also know that, like, if that becomes in your space, it's triggering, right? And that is something that if you were trying to heal yourself or protect yourself, or even just kind of keep your stress down, which is a conversation that I had with a really good friend that had some unfortunate like health news recently. It was like the thing was brought on by stress. And stress is this thing that literally can kill you if we are not being very careful about the stories that we are telling ourselves, or the conversations that we're having with ourselves, and then ultimately the conversations that we're having with others, right? And so Anika said, quickly assessing, that, yeah, I mean, because we see the red flags so much, and then we ignore the red flags, right? Or we make concessions for the red flags that we see in others and other situations, and that's just not okay. And when you look back, when you finally cut the cord and you look back, it's just like, oh my God, like I saw something from day one, and I saw something at day 5. Like, why did I constantly continue to like ignore this thing or make concessions and not make the concessions for myself? Right. And so, hey, Aiden, first off, you're amazing, and you can do this. Do you remember? I do remember you. We met at the either FBLA or the DECA conference. I hope all is well, man. And I'd love to hear more about like how like your business and your business ideas have kind of come to life. And so, all right, guys, I'm gonna get off because we're trying to pack up, and our plan was to actually get on the road 3 hours ago. We're still here, and so. Alan, cut them off quick. Gotta protect your spirit and energy. Absolutely. And then Black Phoenix was like, absolutely right. So trust your intuition. Red flags are a sign. They are, right? And so, and intuition is just this really interesting thing that we have to get more in tune with. And I think a lot of us have during the pandemic, right? Because we've just kind of been forced to, because just like Alan said before about like our parents, from a generational shift, kind of being in survival mode, we are all literally thrown back into survival mode. And for some of us, it has meant rest. For some of us, it has meant stress and despair and loss of life, and trying to get back to centering that. I don't know about y'all, for one of the biggest things that has helped me is not watching the news. And I keep saying that like every time I get on the live, like I stop watching the news. I have changed the way I am still staying informed, right? But like the news is such a hard thing, and like every time I turn on CNN, it's like that death toll, which is important to remind people to protect themselves because of what could happen. But seeing that those big loss of life, like every single time you turn on CNN is so hard, right? And so like it's I don't know, it's weird. A lot of stuff is weird. Anyway, guys, I will touch base back with y'all later, but I just want you to take some time and carve out some time to ask yourself, hey Aja, ask yourself, who are you uninterrupted? What has interrupted you? And now that you know who you would be, and you've kind of mapped out what that person would look like, what you would look like, uninterrupted, undisrupted, like not disrupted, nothing getting in the way, you being the best steward of your gifts at the fullest extent. What does that person actually look like? Not just saying I got goals and dreams, but nothing standing in the way. What does that look like for you? And what has interrupted you? And then what are you going to do about it? And so take some time to answer those questions. DM me, because I'd love to hear some of the responses. Send me a voice audio message as well, so we can keep the conversation going. Bye, guys.